Why are the same boomers that grew up with David Bowie, Prince, and Michael Jackson upset with the new generation not being masculine? Boomers grew up with Elvis and the Beatles and such, MJ, and that didn't peak until the 80s when they started singing against the boomers to appeal to Gen X. Okay, I asked my dad this because he loves music, but is super conservative. For the musicians it is a performance, and for fashionable purposes not always a lifestyle. For many musicians, dressing feminine gets attention to help make them money, etc. Like glam rockers. Example, Alice Cooper sings about bucking the system, but hardcore conservative. Whereas unmasculine men are just not manly. It's almost as if they are two different groups of people. Or do you really think that everyone from the same generation thinks and feels the same? Generations are not homogeneous. Some boomers were hippies. Other boomers absolutely hated hippies. These folks were perfectly fine with Bowie and glitter and platform boots because they could compartmentalize it as just entertainment. But when regular guys express themselves the same way, suddenly it's the end of civilization. The truth is, gender bending was safely contained to the stage back then, controlled by record labels and media. Now every kid with a phone can reach millions, showing different ways to be a man. That's what's really got them shook. Neither this boomer nor her boomer husband can be bothered to harass people for their personal choices that don't hurt anyone else. I'm sorry that so many in our age group apparently need to get a freaking life. The other thing is that glam rock is not an expression of femininity as much as hypermasculinity and hypersexuality. I'm so masculine I can glam up, and I'm still more masculine than you. Like a beautiful 20-year-old model dressing in ragged clothes as a variety of boasting, it just emphasizes their strengths. Masculinity that breaks the dial and comes around the other side. Freddie Mercury works as a variation on this, because he was flamboyantly masculine. Who do you think are boomers? Because all the boomers I know barely know who they are. Are you talking about older Gen X? You forgot Boy George. The same reason people who grew up to rage against the machine are now raging for the machine. Exposure to something doesn't mean they internalize it. A deeper analysis doesn't always start and certainly can't be expected to finish. I'm from the older generation that grew up with those people, and there were plenty of people making those comments back then too. Nothing has changed in that regard. There's just a certain segment of the population that does not agree with it, and that is probably not going to change. My suggestion, just ignore it. Those people don't count. OP just making up bullshit stories and throws in the boomer name for clickbait, loser. Just because some liked those artists doesn't mean everyone did. Do you know how many people hate Taylor Swift? Jackson, Prince, Bowie, Mercury, and Kiss were controversial at the time too. Nothing new, just a slightly different tang to the mouthwash. It still sells ads that leads to products being sold. Despite what others are saying about those being Gen X, they had Liberace, Little Richard, the Kinks, Lola unambiguously about a trans hookup, Manilow. As a Gen X elder, it was mostly Gen Zer territory. I am more shocked of Gen Zers that struggle with gender, sexuality, and pronouns, since a good chunk of bands in the 80s were very androgynous or gay. I don't think you know enough about what you're talking about to have a problem with anything. Those people who say that now weren't fans of those three back then either. They were still homophobic and hateful towards those men and anyone who liked them. Some yo-yo dancing on stage with some makeup isn't the same thing as you wearing skinny jeans to work and not being able to change a flat tire. Ferguson.